Hey guys, what's up? It's the Tin Man. I'm joined here this evening by my good friend, Nick. We just got back from seeing Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's newest military masterpiece, starring two of his favorites, Cillian Murphy and Tom Hardy, whom we're familiar with from his Batman trilogy, among other Inception.
Starring as much as, and they showed up and they got a pretty decent paycheck for a few days' work.
That's about right. They were very minimalist, about as minimalistic appearances as you could possibly make in a movie, and still be top billed.
And still be top billed, and still actually show up nearly every minute of the movie for the whole movie.
There's a lot of cutting back and forth, quick cuts going on here.
We'll get back to that.
We'll get back to that. There's a lot to unpack here. It's a very vast movie in its scope, and certainly larger than life in terms of its setting and in terms of the impending doom resounding throughout, as indicated by our opening sequence of Hans Zimmer Inception horn. There's also a lot of that in the movie, so I hope you're a big fan of, wear your earplugs if need be. We saw this in IMAX, which I feel was worth it.
The audio needed to reverberate throughout your eardrums.
Absolutely.
Non-stop.
The seats were shaking. That's true. So I guess, how do we preface this in terms of Christopher Nolan has kind of taken some time for himself since the Batmans.
Well, yeah, he had Interstellar, he had
Inception. So he likes his art house stuff, his more philosophical, high concept pieces. And I guess this is a more down-to-earth storytelling, but he still dabbles in some very interesting themes.
And some more high concept filmmaking rather than actually storytelling.
He is a technical mastermind. I think Inception proved that in his gimbal turning hallway scene, and he uses a lot of the same tricks here with the spinning of sets and the impressive scale of his sinking battleships. They've come a long way since Titanic.
I'd hope so.
I would hope so. I guess it's been a few years.
I would imagine Titanic probably cost a lot more to make only because of the time they tried to make it.
That's true.
Like nowadays, he could make this movie and still be like, oh, I can turn a profit without having heartthrob Leonardo DiCaprio as the center stage.
Well, I don't think he's fallen too far by choosing Harry Styles to be one of his pretty boys. We do follow three other soldiers outside of Cillian Murphy, the Shivering Man, as he's billed, and Tom Hardy's Farrier.
Yeah, because they never actually named him.
Yeah, interestingly enough. I guess the Shivering Man is he's the symbol of cowardice. He's the metaphor of the fear that lies in all men, the desire to turn back and not face danger head on and charge into the fray.
Although you could say that's a theme for all of the people in the movie is they're presented with a situation of intense fear, and then the question is, how do they handle it?
Absolutely. We will work our way towards themes, but that's a good starting point, I think.
For now, the history of Dunkirk. The fear comes later.
Yeah. The movie starts out, we're following one soldier, who I really believed. I thought he did a great performance, and he's running through the streets from gunfire, but we never once see the Germans. We never see the Nazis. We never see the enemy at all. We just see the gunshots and the effects of soldiers dropping like flies, running away.
They're always a distant threat, and that's actually something else to mention, is they never call the Germans the Nazis or the Germans. They call them the enemy.
Yes.
The enemy has surrounded them on the beaches of Dunkirk. There is no escape.
There's no escape. They've painted themselves into a corner. There's no avenue for escape. They've got no place to turn. And it's amazing because there's such a fine line. It's just he crosses over those sandbags, and it's like one block to the beach, just vast beaches. They've got no line. And that just blew my mind. It's like walking out and just seeing like an apocalypse and just the realization of there's no help here.
And the apocalypse is just right next door.
Everyone's lined up for it, and there's no one. There's no way out.
You can see both your goal and your death.
Absolutely. It's all right there, and the look on his face just sold it for me right away. I was awestruck by the vastness of that beach. It's funny because like I've toured a lot of those beaches in Ireland and England and Italy, and they're just like tourist traps now. And then I don't know. There's something about having a historical sense of place. I think that this movie really, it's all beaches. It's all beach scenery. and it's just humans awash in foam and oil slicks and fire and open blue skies. And the vastness of the 70mm screen or an IMAX screen is essential to capture the grandeur and the scale of these things, the smallness of man.
And
in this vast
on
plane.
That same note, I believe Christopher Nolan was saying how he doesn't like the idea of how Netflix just releases their stuff for streaming.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't go to theaters. Like, imagine if this movie, with its grand stage, just went to your TV.
That's true. Something would be lost there. I guess that's the value of going to a theater and supporting these. It's funny how, I think before Baby Driver, Edgar Wright comes on, and I don't know if when you saw it was like, he came on screen, thank you, mea culpa, for coming to the theater and spending money and giving life to it instead of pirating it and watching it at home. Thank you.
Although that's a theme I've been noticing lately.
Like
the past few years, there's been a lot of
directors.
After the previews.
Yep.
Hi, I'm actor so-and-so. Thank you for coming to see our movie.
Right.
And that seems to be in the beginning of a lot of movies.
It was before X-Men, I recall, a couple other movies. But yeah, I suppose the bootleggers would just cut that part off, or still include it as like a little tongue-in-cheek, haha, fuck you kind of thing.
If I were a bootlegger, I would insert an extra piracy ad.
You should do it yourself. You're like just wearing a ski mask. Thank you for bootlegging this product. Like,
I hope when you steal movies, you steal the copy that I provided for you. It's the service I give.
Let's get into some nitty gritty here. What were your impressions from Dunkirk? Because I guess I have a lot more faith in the same way that the comics I buy these days are about writers or authors. I have faith in them, not necessarily the studio. I have faith in Nolan to deliver something amazing. I will see any Nolan movie the rest of his life.
Yes. Well, with Nolan though, like I guess you think back like with the Batman trilogy, like as good as Dark Knight was, and with all the issues that Dark Knight Rises had.
Sure.
I think
faith wasn't broken though.
Faith wasn't broken, but you can at least say that Christopher Nolan is ambitious.
Absolutely.
He is always ambitious with his titles. And after like watching earlier this year, I watched The Mummy.
Yeah.
There was no ambition there.
No. That's another thing. I mean, we can get into Tom Cruise, but
I suppose if you're going to compare Dunkirk with other movies, like The Mummy is the obvious like bad choice.
Yeah. There's no comparison there.
But yeah, I expected a Christopher Nolan movie to be very ambitious. I expected it to be very big in scale. Like if he made a smaller movie these days, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think this was a smaller movie for him. It was a more human movie.
I
mean, the scale of it, there's a million battleships across an ocean. It's a whole ocean with planes. But for him, I still feel like conceptually, it's much more grounded. Would you agree?
There are only hundreds of people in this shot.
Right.
This is small
this
for
is
this
small
guy.
for him. Yeah. I mean, it's not traveling dimensions and time with Interstellar. It's not dipping into the layers of human subconscious with Inception.
It's just casting actors and telling them to put on costumes.
Right.
It's simpler to execute.
It's a stage play, basically, but with giant, sinking, actual battleships. There's no green screen shit here. That's what I really appreciated. I felt like there was minimal special effects being used. There was a lot of practical.
Well, I'm sure
there were some.
There were
clearly in those
green screen effects when necessary.
Yeah.
But it's not like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull,
sure.
which added CG
Lucas.
for no reason.
That's true. So I felt there was a good fidelity, though. Like, I love how Nolan does things so practically as much as possible. Like, you look at his early work, like Following. You know, he comes from a very like grounded background, and it's very always character centric, but also deeper. He dives into the characters, and we see a lot of that, which really impressed me.
I'm sure there's going to be a Christopher Nolan movie where they actually dive into the characters.
Yeah, it's about a swim fan to Electric Boogaloo. Shall we talk about performances? Who really stood out to you? Kenneth Branagh.
His ability to remove his hat in a dramatic fashion is second to none. If I was starring a character who had to remove their hat,
he's who you'd want. Yeah.
He's the man.
Yeah.
Although, like with performances like Kenneth Branagh, Cillian Murphy, Tom Hardy, a lot of them didn't really have as much to do.
That's true.
Like Kenneth Branagh's major role was to walk back and forth down a bridge while providing exposition.
Yes.
Because most of the points of view aren't going to get it.
Right. He's the only one who has the meta-awareness of the situation. They keep all the soldiers in the dark. You're waiting in line on the beach for a boat, and you're going to follow decorum and be civil towards each other and not push and shove, despite death breathing down your back. But he is constantly updating us to the actual situation. There are 300,000 men that need to be brought back, and they are the last bastion on continental proper Europe in the north of France. And Dunkirk is the one rally point where they can escape. And Britain needs its army back, needs lives back, as many as it can possibly grasp for the next battle. And this is a lost cause.
Because we know this takes place in 1940.
1940. So before America enters the war, a year before we enter the war. So England's the last bastion.
Enter the war, let alone 4 years before
we get there to that theater. Exactly.
Yeah. That's where everything's falling apart.
I suppose that's where most casual viewers, they would lack that conception of, well, why isn't America coming in here to save the day? Why isn't Ben Affleck and Matt Damon here to save the day this time? Why not?
I saw Ben Affleck in the movie. He was fighting the good fight.
We should tell people that. I'm going to use Pearl Art as the cover because then people will actually listen to this. It's a good ploy. They should have. Why didn't Christopher Nolan hire them? He's Batman. Ben Batfleck. You'd think they would just one thing lead to another.
I mean, I'm sure he had enough time to show up for a role where he walks back and forth across a bridge and does nothing else.
Yeah.
Those
baby blues.
Whereas, like, you look at Cillian Murphy, and his role, he spends most of the time on a boat.
Not talking or
doing anything.
Him slapping little boys down stairwells.
Who doesn't, really?
I mean, that's the real meat and potatoes of any performance nowadays. He'll get the Oscar for that.
But his performance was more towards, like, to just kind of go into that theme of fear.
Right. Absolutely. He's the embodiment of fear.
But he's also the main role that vocalizes it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone
else is a stiff upper lip. They're all British, and we're going to be civil, and we're all going to do our duty. But blind old men will show up and sail out to sea with U-boats lurking about and dive bombers, and we're going to toe the line, and we're going to bootstraps.
But even like with the soldiers on the ground, they interact with each other very wordlessly, and they have a very good idea of like what each other wants to do.
That's true.
That is get off of the beach.
That is one thing I liked, is that the soldiers, the boys, they were kids practically on this beach. No words need be said. They could look at each other, nod at the canteen, pass the canteen, nod at the boots, tie the boots. There was no communication required. They all had one precise goal in mind and know exactly what it is. So nothing was said for the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie between anyone. That was incredible to me.
But it was only when you left that group of characters on the beach and you went to the other characters
that discussion occurred.
That they started speaking.
Yeah.
And then you loop around to Tom Hardy, whose character becomes more interesting as he goes on, as the longer he progresses. But a lot of the time, it's like he basically is there to show how terrible flying was back in the 1940s.
I love dogfights. I've always loved dogfighting video games, Star Fox, Crimson Skies, Ace Combat. I love flight. I love Aviator. I love movies like Flyboys. Any movie about flight, I'll go see it. And I thought the cinematography was beautiful in those sequences. It was all shot through the reticle.
Yeah.
Just his aiming target, waiting to line up those shots. As the Messerschmitts flew by from in front of his Spitfire. And that was such a cool sequence, but it also lent the grand scale of just the eye in the sky, the angel flying silently overhead, saving everyone's ass repeatedly. And I love that viewpoint, the desperation of being absolutely helpless and feckless on a beach, to being the one angel, the one person who can save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives in your grasp, at your fingertip. It's an amazing difference of perspective.
But I thought it was an interesting, like, in a technical side, like,
for sure.
The idea of, like, their instruments.
Yeah.
There's a lot of focus in trying to make it historically accurate.
His fuel gauge gets cracked, so he has no clue. He's constantly having to check his watch.
He's checking how much the other
fuel, exactly,
the other pilot has,
based on
to figure out how much fuel he has left.
That was really interesting, and it created a desperation and a sense of self-sacrifice, which we won't mention just yet. But suffice to say,
but
triage is a huge moral of this movie. Choosing to save self-preservation, or what's good for the good of the many versus the good of the few, I suppose, to quote Spock. So
the idea is that you it's very much towards sacrifice.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of the characters kind of fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But the major characters are generally the people on the beach, the people you don't necessarily know by their acting, by their names, their performances, their histories.
And perhaps that's the intention, is to have them be the faceless masses, because there are no stars as the grunts. The grunts are just kids.
Like, imagine if Saving Private Ryan had Tom Cruise running up the beach.
Right, exactly.
Like, Tom Hanks is at the very least, you can be like, okay, I buy it, but I don't know any of these other people.
Right. There's always kind of that separation of it's sometimes better to err on the side of not knowing and just to feel.
Of star power versus just
not letting star power override the role. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was also hilarious that, like, Tom Hardy was wearing a face mask and barely, like mutteredly speaking the whole time, like, my name is Bane, I bring the pain. I kept waiting for the nod, like the fourth wall breaking moment, like, I can't hear you.
But no, he spoke in his English accent.
He did. I don't know, Tom Hardy's amazing, and I really look forward to seeing him as Venom. I saw him last in The Revenant, I guess, so he's always kind of understated, and so Mad Max too, so. Yeah, he's always kind of very understated in his performances, and that's the exact same Tom Hardy here. He's the glorious hero who doesn't really say anything, and he just gets the job done, and you love him for it. I think he takes those roles on purpose, or
Christopher Nolan is like, hey,
here's what you're taking.
I got a movie coming out, and I need actors.
Yeah, we get along, and Cillian Murphy too. I guess he's much more eclectic in his roles between Peaky Blinders and other choices he's made in his career, but he was good. I liked him. He had that intensity. Not like 28 Days Later intense, but
in a different sort of way.
Yeah.
Time. Now the movie does an odd thing with time that it doesn't really. It kind of understates at the beginning of the movie. In which it sets up different scenarios, and it tells you a specific time frame.
With bullet points. Which makes you originally feel like it's going to be a documentary or a much more military film from the outset.
But then you get to this part of the movie where you start switching from scenes that take place in the day and scenes that take place in the night. And back to back. So it's like, okay, wait, so this is not happening at the same time.
Right. They don't tell you that. You have to figure that out. There's a jarring moment that kind of took me out of the movie, actually.
A little bit.
Not completely.
I was still like...
But I was like, wait, why? We've seen these other actors at a further point in their lives than we are now, and vice versa. We've seen this time jump.
But why are we doing this time jump?
Why? To what extent, what point of the narrative is this being done?
And I would imagine the main reason for that point is to keep the movie at a constant, never dropping high tension. You need to be feeling tense for all of the characters at all of the times.
And you do. I was holding on to my seat, man. I was wringing my hands in absolute fear.
Because imagine if the story was told in just a regular time.
Right. It'd be decompressed. Oh, there'd be a lull.
There'd be a break
somewhere.
And lows as characters move about. But with that constant switching between, okay, so this character is fairly safe, but these characters are not. And you don't even know if it's taking place at the same time or a day ago.
Right.
And by the time you figure that part out, it's like, okay, so if this happened a day ago, and they're heading down the English Channel now, are they safe? Will they find the wreckage of where they once
their
were?
boat, right?
And then there's, as you mentioned, the Hans Zimmer score.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, have you ever seen those videos on YouTube where it's like people take away all the audio and they just like leave the awkward dancing or what have you, like Bruno Mars?
Yeah.
It's just awkward without the music or even a cappella. It's creepy. And this movie would feel like a totally different experience without the Hans Zimmer score. I think it adds so much to the tension. The tightness of the strings and the droning of the just pounding fear on the door, just the ships of metal. It like really evokes just massive bodies, nefarious workings, chains rattling. It's really creepy. It's just really otherworldly.
I think there's some scenes that would still maintain their tension even without.
Sure.
Especially towards the beginning of the movie where the soldiers are standing on the beach and then they all look up and they see this enemy fighter pilot coming down towards the beach.
Yes, it's the screaming engines.
And then you got them. And then that's the other half of the noise, is all of just the engines, the planes flying by.
The Foley guy earned his paycheck for this one. Rattling chains and crinkling burlap sacks and just, I don't know, like the audio added so much. I guess in an age where like I'm often underwhelmed by scores, Hans Zimmer steals the show in a way that few composers still do effectively in movies. Like, I guess you saw Rogue One. Did you notice how, the music was underwhelming compared to past Star Wars films? I feel it when it's not there. It's kind of like porn. Like, I expect some story to be there. And when it's not there, I feel its absence. But I enjoy it all the more when it's there. And it's ever present. And it's additive.
Yes.
I want a pizza delivery guy.
I want to hear
that chains jingle. I want to hear that doorbell.
Because why are they having sex?
Right.
Like, we need to know why.
I need to know.
Was there sausage on that pizza?
There was.
Was that requested?
Hans Zimmer, suffice to say, delivers the sausage with aplomb.
But, like, one of the differences I noticed between John Wick 1 and John Wick 2 is when you go to John Wick 2, every gunshot is deafening.
Yes.
And that's something I noticed with this movie we're
Dunkirk,
talking about.
absolutely.
Dunkirk.
Dunkirk, yeah.
Is that, like, every single gunshot from the very first one.
I was startled several times by it. I was just surrounded by the deafening echo of the gunshot, and I almost, like, wanted to bust out earplugs at one point, because I was like, this is so... It left me shaken.
It makes you feel immediate.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when they're all trapped like tin cans, as they often are in this movie. They're trapped like sardines, and that was another theme. They were all at one point just suffocating and drowning, and all the characters were suffocating and drowning at the same time.
Like, they're all trapped on some sort of locale,
some sense,
whether it's a beach, it's a boat,
in a crashed plane,
on the ocean.
The sense of being stuck in place created a sense of claustrophobia even in me. And I'm not usually susceptible to that sort of, I guess, transference or empathy. But it really, you feel it here. Yeah. And I guess that's the sign of a good immersive experience. The first person perspective.
He really brought his most immersion.
He brought a lot of immersion to the field. Kind of like a BioShock / Fallout type deal.
Yeah. But also because the point of view is just so squared on the people.
That's true.
Like, we were talking about how you never really see the enemy because they never see the enemy.
Not.
You only see, like, a very claustrophobic viewpoint.
It's true. He has a very tight lens on his subject always.
Although you can imagine what it might have been like filming that with giant IMAX cameras,
right,
inside this
inside of
little boat,
sinking ships and dinghies and things. Yeah.
Okay, we need you to film this in a closet It can fit one person and no cameras.
I like how they couldn't get that angle. They never got the straight on angle because they couldn't fit any camera in that little dingy, like little boat hallway to show Cillian Murphy trapped in that closet.
Like, can we cut out the side of the boat in order to?
And they would have had to. But it lent to kind of like the fidelity of the angles of the viewer too. I think everything is like very much set inside someone's skull.
Yes.
There's never, and that's why they have the guy in the plane to show the scale of the battlefield. It's always from his viewpoint. It's never just like a wide switch to wide lens thing, or it's from the guy at the end of the dock looking back at the beach with everything burning in the distance.
Well, with like the guy in the plane, that's the best way to see the viewpoint of all the boats on the water.
Right.
Because most of the people are going to be inside the boats.
Right. And the narrative never breaks away from that. It's always within someone's head.
But on the beach, you can have that individual person and still get that sense of scale.
It's true. That's another thing. For how many, just the sense of like the conga line of boats crossing the channel. This whole movie takes place along one strip of beach and one line across the English Channel, and
so that's why it's technically a smaller movie for Christopher Nolan, in that the locations are very minimal.
It's linear. At least it's on an X, Y, and Z axis at times, but at the same time,
it rewinds.
The way it works through time complicates things in an interesting way.
Would it still be just as good
had it been strictly
linear?
True. I think he cuts through a lot of fat.
Would we lose too much?
Well, that's one thing. This is a very concise movie. I expected like a 3-hour war movie, and we got, what was it, like an hour and 45 minutes? Thereabouts? Yeah.
But I remember there was one part where they were cutting between like 4 different groups of people.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, this person's life is in danger, and we're going to only show them for 5 seconds.
Right.
And now we're going to cut to this other person whose life is in danger.
Yes.
And we're going to keep rotating without reaching any sort of conclusion. You must be on the edge of your seat at all times.
Had me there. Yeah, that was very much an effective ratcheting of tension, and they kept you there. There was no exhale until the end of the movie.
A little bit closer, but yeah.
Yeah. Or at least the denouement. There's a lot to be said for Nolan. He's really good at playing with your emotions and playing with your perspective and playing with time. Those are things he always does in movies. In Inception, he's messing with time and dimension and space, and in Batman, there's a giant ticking nuclear time bomb counting down that Batman has to fly away from the city, and I guess we see a lot of those same devices at work. He wants the Zelda Majora's Mask moon is coming to crash into Earth at all times. How much can you get done before it impacts?
But considering everybody's goal is the same, this also makes the story a lot easier to tell. Like with Batman, there's so many plot threads going on.
Yeah.
But in Dunkirk, we need to get to Dunkirk, we need to leave Dunkirk. Those are the main plot threads.
You don't want to be in Dunkirk right now.
You don't want to stay in Dunkirk.
Not a good place to be.
You don't want to get a reservation. You don't want to book any hotels in Dunkirk, despite how cheap they are.
Some good Airbnbs. Some good baguettes, I'm sure. But not this time of year.
Not this time of year.
Yeah, no.
It's a bad place.
It's a bad place. Although I did like the point where the Farrier's flying over gliding back and forth with no fuel left. Back and forth, just mowing planes down, and there's that beautiful shot of all the buildings. And I would like to go there right now.
It's very picturesque.
It's very picturesque.
Dunkirk.
Yes.
And so after the troubles, maybe take a visit.
Yeah. Once hostilities wind down to a manageable level, go visit. Can we get a pop-up ad, like Google? Give us some tourism for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure.
We'll take you to a trip through Dunkirk.
We will.
The morals.
The mores.
The morals.
The morals.
Yeah, we've already.
Because morale was pretty crappy.
Yeah.
Although I was shocked at how civil they were, waiting in line to die.
Although I guess at that point, I just realized one thing that we didn't necessarily talk about was the morale of war in regards to how this is one of the very rare war movies in which the main side of the protagonists are losing.
This is not a big victory cheer. This is not walking out of the theater feeling real good kind of deal. They triumph. It's a triumph of the human spirit.
Yeah.
Not a military victory going on here.
Yeah. The closest I might think of in about loss might be Das Boot.
Sure.
In which at the end of the movie it's like, they tried so hard and
got so far,
and in the end it didn't really matter.
Very timely.
Yeah.
Very timely. R.I.P. Chester too soon.
But at the same time, then there's Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Where
it's a Pyrrhic victory. Like, they've lost so much and been devastated, but at least they've staved off this invasion for another day to
they've defended themselves and struck back.
Right. But there's no love story here.
There's no love story. There's only friendship and only implied friendship.
I like how a lot of movies are cutting out that romance garbage these days.
None of
Logan, and just there's no time for that. No time for Love, Dr. Jones. This is all about bros and survival.
Logan didn't really have time for that either. Well, I guess it had time for a little bit of that.
Be a little broing out with projects, I think friendship this is a more universal theme. I think love is like a much tougher thing to tackle, and this is more survival and fraternity and brothers in arms, and we see some of that here.
Yeah.
And that's an admirable thing. I think this is very much a dude's war movie.
Yeah.
Like our audience was mostly dudes. I noticed.
I didn't really look.
I always kind of try and gauge the feel. I mean, this is opening weekend. Who's here? Who's coming out to see this movie? This was not a date night movie. Kind of a downer for that situation. I don't know. I don't know if you take your girl to see this movie. I feel like it's.
I would imagine
there were a lot of older dudes here.
I would imagine if you're seeing a girl who's like, "Hey, should we go see Dunkirk for date night?"
Or Valerian.
That's where you've got
a winner. You put a ring on that one because she's gonna watch documentaries with you like every night, and like it's gonna be good. Watch History Channel the rest of your life and like build puzzles, paint models. She'll paint your models for you. It's a good girl. Suffice to say, there were a lot of dudes in this theater, and there were a lot of bros.
Well, the attraction is, of course, see things blow up.
Right.
But
there was some of that.
But it was more important at figuring out, like, I'm seeing, like, how a morale deficient army reacts to the situation. In which, like, there's the constant desire, like, do you run at any cost? Who gets in your way when you try to run?
Yep. Rats off a sinking ship, desperately clawing each other out of the way, finding any reason to just pick up a gurney so you can carry and get on a ship as a medical, just from the outset. They are so desperate and trying to just connive and be cunning to survive.
Are there any morals to escaping that kind of situation?
Yeah. They do say at one point, this is survival. There's nothing fair about it. Like, weighing one person's life over another. There are actually a few points are land about, like, rank. Like, you're not... They look down at each other's noses at, oh, well, you're just army. Well, this is a grenadier line. We have preference.
Only
we're
English
medics
in this line.
Right, exactly. Only English, not Frenchy. Sorry, Frenchy. Those class distinctions, I think, are interesting because that's kind of the landscape of our current political situation.
But I think, like, towards the beginning, I guess this kind of builds towards what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is towards the beginning, there's, like, the class distinctions.
Yes.
But as everything just turns to shit, then those class distinctions start to separate, and then it's like, oh, we're just people trying to survive.
Absolutely.
And you can almost say that's sometimes happening.
Yeah, I think we're seeing those strictures
But maybe we're kind of reading that into from the movie.
Well, there are some quotes to support that, though. I think at least with the Admiral's realization of the boy wakes up. Oh, come on, lad! Come get on the ship. And
we're officers, but I hope that doesn't scare you.
Exactly, like kind of the proles and the haves versus have-nots. Like you're welcome to salvation and life as well, but only at our invitation. Sorry, kids, no health care for you. Okay. We should also mention the boy in Loss of Innocence, George. We haven't really touched on him, and he's, I think, maybe if there's any heart, he's one of them.
Yeah, and that he sees personal death that affects personal damage from the war.
Yeah.
And how he reacts to it.
Yeah, well, also, like, the innocence, because he's just a kid who seeks, with no comprehension of war, he's diametrically opposed to Cillian Murphy's character, who has seen the horrors of war, and we see what he lost. We saw his crew all killed, and he was the last surviving one.
Well, we didn't even see it.
We didn't see that. It was off camera. We saw him before, on the boat, as the captain leader, and then afterward, and that's such a haunting scene. He's just sitting on the sinking propeller, the last bastion of that ship sticking above water, and that's a haunting scene. That's the most gripping visual for me as an artist, that shot of. I drew it actually on my notes here. Him sitting on the propeller with the boat coming up to save him. And I think George, on the other hand, has no concept of war, and so he's willing to go, I want to go be a hero. I want to prove myself and my worth to my classmates. When he gets on the boat, the call to arms.
You can say you can see that in a lot of superhero stories, like Spider-Man. Had that, like, I want to be the hero, I want to be the guy, and then it's like, oh my gosh, this is actually really dangerous.
Yeah,
like,
he's Sir Gawain. He has his naivete is also his greatest strength, because has no conception of cowardice. Whereas he asks at one point, why is he a coward? Why is he? He's shell-shocked, lad. You got to give him a break, because he doesn't know the horrors of war, so he can approach these things with all gusto. You have to experience it, and he suffers horribly for it. There are many casualties, but his is the one you really feel, which is interesting, I think.
Well, it's because it's also one of the only characters you get to know before they die. A lot of the characters who die in the movie are like one of a mass group of people.
That's true.
Who got blown up.
I think the real moral of the story is one man's worth. One man can make all the difference in Tom Hardy's character, saving the day for everyone. One man's worth is the most impactful death with George, because you really feel it, and his death was just so nonsensical and unnecessary, and so it feels really tragic and stupid and pointless, as they all are. Like, conflict and war is you really feel
like everybody died for nothing.
Right. Like, what a waste of life all around. But also, what heroism.
All we did is survive. And that's sometimes enough.
Yes. The denouement is interesting, the way it kind of addresses between the two soldiers, Harry Styles and our lead, the soldier boy. They've survived. They've made it back to London. They're extremely grateful. They're being handed breads by a bunch of volunteer old men, and
they seem to have a pretty high supply of sliced bread and jam.
Hey, that honestly looked delicious.
I kind of want sliced bread.
I really want
and
some
jam.
Smuckers right about now. Some Uncrustables.
Yeah.
Can we go get? You got any jam?
No.
We need some Smuckers.
No. Video canceled.
We can't do this right now.
Can't do it anymore.
I need some Smuckers. But yeah, I think it's interesting how they're leaving, and their reward is, everyone's handing them tea and handing them jam and bread, and it's all very proper. Giving them beers. Congratulations for surviving, son.
But then I think especially with that war more than anything else. Like, you see the people coming back, and you're like, Okay,
You saw some shit.
we know why you're fighting.
Yeah.
We know
For all of us. It was a group effort.
Yeah. We know that what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Like other wars, like
it was very clear.
Vietnam,
a little murkier, less of a hero's return.
Iraq Part 2.
We've lost that somehow, but I guess it's easier when you're fighting against clear evil, pure evil.
Yes.
Yeah. Less gray, less shades of gray.
Countries that are taking over other countries.
Right.
That have been on a
genocidal warpath.
Yeah. They kind of stand out. You're like, okay, I can see that you're fighting the good fight.
Yes. So Grandma and Grandpapa are willing to make some tea and crumpets for you. But I do think it's interesting how it kind of brings things full circle. So George is going blind as a result of being slapped down a staircase by the shivering man. And a blind man welcomes them back, and the first soldier walks by. He doesn't realize that this old man is blind, so he says he couldn't even look me in the face, and he felt shame for having come back from this situation. Whereas the second soldier felt gratitude because he kind of gave him like a blessing, like crossing the river Styx. Like he touched his face. The blind man touched his face and acknowledged him, like, well done. Way to survive your journey, your passage through hell, and to the other side of the river Styx here, and welcome home. And he slept the sleep of angels, whereas the other one, he was looking for that acknowledgement still. And I guess that's the difference of perspective. Even though it was the exact same person, I guess some people felt like failures, and some people felt like victors. That whole surviving is enough,
and some people just wanted to disappear into the crowd.
Yeah.
But again, you've got all these different viewpoints, and they all went through the same situation, but it was so harrowing that they came out differently.
Yeah. But that blind man could very well have been George. I think blindness is an interesting point here, where George could have survived had they turned around and just merely been blinded and not died from blood loss. Like, that could have been him. They were talking about the next battle always. What can we salvage from this situation? And it's clearly lost. Who will come back? Who will survive to fight the next day? And George,
Can one person's life be sacrificed for the many?
Right. And we saw that with when they turned back to save the pilot. We saw that when they didn't turn back to save George. As opposed to saving, 50 guys on a boat that was burning and sinking and exploding. I mean, they're constantly making triage decisions with every value of every life and weighing those decisions and then having to live with the consequences. And, their math doesn't always add up. But in those moments, I think it was really cool how they had the boat driver, the old man, say, I lost my son in the first week, so I knew that pilot would come through because my son was an airman as well, and I had faith in him. I love that little nod. Like, just everyone's fight. We're all fighting this thing together.
Yeah.
Like, that sense of duty is so impressive, because I don't know that everyone would nowadays.
Yeah, whether you're a civilian or military, would civilians be willing to jump out onto a boat and
risk their own lives with all the boats down in Belmont Harbor, drive up the St. Lawrence Canal and go fight the war for New York City if need be? And
although you can almost argue that the world has become so systemic that, I would volunteer to jump on a boat to save you, but I work tomorrow.
Right.
From 9 to 5. I got bills to pay.
If you could do it after, like a late evening skirmish.
I can
squeeze that in.
I got some vacation time I could use.
Put it in the calendar.
But my medical insurance, it's not very good. So if it doesn't cover any war zone related injuries,
that's true.
If I get shot trying to save you, I'm gonna have to turn back.
Couldn't blame you. Couldn't really blame you. I get it.
But then again, imagine what kind of conflict would it have to be
would
so
it take to
big
get people to do that?
That
to recycle their tins. It does make you think of that era, though, and how much simpler things were.
Yes.
The world was a much simpler place, and I think the distinctions between good and evil and cause and effect were much more clear.
Although, again, if an enemy actually shows up that is so clear Like you don't even have to refer to them as a group.
Right.
You just call them the enemy and get away with it.
You know what they're talking about.
You know the world has gotten pretty bad, and you might have a reason to stand up and do something.
I do like how it also creates that sense of innocence in war. How the young son's like, Dad, look, he shot him down. That's right, son. The air show sure is appealing. When there's death all around them, and there's still that sense of innocence and boyhood transitioning to manhood through conflict. When all the boys are trapped in that sardine can together of a boat, and bullets are coming through the walls, and they're trying to plug the holes with their fingers to prevent the drowning of them all.
Joe, if
it's almost like a metaphor or a symbol of something.
If you die, if you sacrifice your life to save me, I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Seems like a fair exchange.
Yeah.
Let's never get trapped in a sardine can boat, being shot full of holes as water rises all around us.
Let's get trapped in separate sardine cans. Yeah. That way we don't have to make any devilish deals.
Yeah, I agree. That's
Faustian, even.
I'll make you that deal. But it is kind of a symbol, like the most obvious symbol at one of the highest points of tension in the movie, where they're this stopgap measure of let's plug these holes and we can maybe all survive at the cost of one other guy. No, you go plug the holes and go into the firing line and get shot, and we'll muffle your screams so you don't give us away.
And then it's especially like at that point in the movie that you're like, okay, I can see where the time is shifting back and forth, and you can see, okay, this is them here, this is them now.
Yeah. Triage and survival. It isn't fair. I guess that about covers all the main points. How much would you recommend this movie, and to whom would you recommend this movie? War buffs? History buffs?
War buffs,
we're students of history and literature, so... Yeah.
Anybody who's interested in seeing a war movie, action movie, anybody who's enjoyed Christopher Nolan's work in the past.
Nolan fans, Tom Hardy fans, there's a big crowd of those people. I know.
Cillian Murphy fans, I'm sure they exist somewhere.
All the ladies coming out of the woodwork for Cillian and Tom Hardy. I know what you're up to, Nolan.
But yeah, I would probably give it a recommend to anybody, really.
Yeah, I think it's an important movie in the sense that it captures an element of the war most people are not familiar with, and also in the grand sense of
it captures a specific event.
Exactly. This is an exact chain of events.
It doesn't try to do anything beyond the event.
There's no sugarcoating. It's extremely boiled down to the brass tacks of the event. Yes. It's almost documentary-like in that sense, with its fidelity of the viewpoints and the groundedness of it and the tightness, the tightly wound narrative. It doesn't get much tighter than that. But it is worth mentioning, alongside other war movies, this is not your typical war movie. This is not Braveheart, this is not Pearl Harbor, it's not that gussied up, it's not that pretty. It's much less glorifying of war.
Well, like, you look at, I guess, if you mentioned Braveheart. Braveheart isn't just about a war, it's also trying to give you this, grand biographies.
Right, of William Wallace, that's true.
Whether it's factual, it's not. But,
there's not a ton of history going on in this movie. It's not a historical...
But it's not really a historical perspective on the Allies, the Nazis...
Right. It's a psychological viewpoint of a certain chain of events, and in that it succeeds immensely. You feel the palpable psychology of fear and decision-making and anxiety, and in that sense it is an extremely triggering movie for perhaps more sensitive audiences.
Perhaps, for certain groups.
Probably wouldn't show this to PTSD type. Any recommendations you would make in terms of other good war movies? I would say for me, Tora Tora Tora. I'm a big fan of the Pearl Harbor stuff. My grandfather fought in Pearl Harbor. He was one of the few survivors of, multiple ships being destroyed. So I've always been interested in naval World War II history, mostly, but we mostly see that in the Pacific Theater and not a whole lot out of the English Channel. So I thought this was an interesting perspective, a new battlefield outside of just D-Day invasion, because this predates that. This is why D-Day had to happen. This is the moment. This is like the Rogue One of Episode 4.
Yeah, instead of an invasion, it's an extraction.
Exactly. Which I think is interesting. Why are we getting all these prequels that take place right before what we already know?
Well, if you were going on to the Dunkirk subject of things, like, technically anything based on a historical event is something we already know.
It's already a chain of events.
But now you'll be able to see it from this angle, that angle.
Right.
But, like, in regards to, like, Dunkirk, I especially like just how close of the viewpoint was in the characters. And something similar to that would probably be, like, more, like, recent would be Saving Private Ryan.
Sure.
But also, one of my favorite war movies was The Dirty Dozen.
Totally.
Which starts off as a comedy.
Ernest Borgnine's amazing.
Like, the first half, like, 2/3 of the movie is a comedy.
Yeah.
And then they finally go to war, and then it's just,
super
like,
horrible.
Really
dudes dropping like flies. Everyone you come to know and love is just getting
shot.
Real dead, real horribly. Yeah. Yeah, I guess from a historical perspective, this does set kind of a new precedent. I wonder what the next obscure moment we'll see. I also always wonder what the next Nolan project will be. He's so eclectic and so intelligent with this project.
I wasn't expecting him to make a World War II movie, especially after you get like Interstellar and
Inception, which are two extremely high concept, extremely cerebral, just dense with information and dense with scapes.
And you can say that, like, after doing 3 comic book movies, that he's like, maybe do something different, do something weird. And he definitely went off to space for that one.
What else is there to really say about this movie? Go see it. Go support Nolan, because this is definitely art house on some level. I'm sure it'll make money.
And just like Edgar Wright says, support original films.
Original films. This is not a sequel or a superhero film or an emoji movie. So go see this movie, please.
Although thinking about like the whole thing about original films, like I almost feel as if Edgar Wright saying it in regards to Baby Driver, almost kind of feels like he came off of Ant-Man. Being like, oh my gosh, like trying to write this Ant-Man movie was horrible. He did Scott Pilgrim, and Scott Pilgrim is based on something original, is based on something else, and that turned out pretty good.
It has his fingerprint,
I
think Ant-Man does too. In the we'll get to that.
In the minutia,
the Dairy Queen and the Thomas Tank Engine train.
Yes. But now he has Baby Driver in theaters. What did you think of Baby Driver?
I love Baby Driver. I thought it was really unique. I thought its audio play was groundbreaking, incredible. The way it played with sensory information blew my mind. It was just a rollicking good time. The performances were excellent. It was cute, it was stylish, it was colorful, it was hip. It was most of the things I want. It's one of those movies that makes you walk out of a theater feeling like we got a little skip in your step.
But like I
would leap off a curb and click your heels together.
But like you were talking about how like you watch Christopher Nolan movie and there's something you'd expect. Yeah. You watch an Edgar Wright movie and then you expect that kind of fun, fast pace.
Yeah. That's true. Well, that's any good auteur. That's a Wes Anderson or a Kevin Smith. There's always going to be a lot of commonalities. There's a through line. They say every great writer tells the same story in different ways. Joss Whedon, for instance, killing off your favorite character in every movie. But Edgar Wright has a sense of play. He has kind of like the average guy, but special as his hero. Pays special attention to music and visuals, and overall extremely tongue-in-cheek and hip sense of humor.
Yeah, he definitely spends a lot more time worrying about what's in frame versus other directors, to the point in which, like, how things enter the frame of the camera, how things exit.
Framing is absolutely one of his hallmarks. Yeah, he is like Hitchcock in that he does a lot of in-camera editing. I think he understands like movement through storyboarding, which as a comic person makes a lot of sense to me. As a comic reader, it's very applicable. I guess that's why he does a lot of comic book type projects with Scott Pilgrim. And
with Scott Pilgrim, but he also likes genre work.
Yes,
in general.
That's true.
And genre work kind of allows him to do things like fast and fun.
Definitely. It's also interesting the carryover from Ant-Man to this, you mentioned, the heist, and the way that was structured so well in Ant-Man and made it such an interesting genre film. And I think this is the heist movie, Gone in 60 Seconds or Fast and the Furious, but actually it's not brochismo or just a heist movie. This is very much a character study.
Yeah, and actually, and a lot of time is spent watching the main character, Baby,
yeah,
do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, when the movie starts off and Baby's in the car, the gangsters are robbing the bank, presumably, and we're just looking at Baby fiddle around with the controls while singing to the music.
Yeah, he's a blank slate from early on, I think, but he's mysterious in that regard.
But, Baby Driver does something interesting in which it spends so much time introducing the character of Baby as separate versus the world of the criminals. And then as the movie comes forward, the problems that Baby has are because of who he is starts bleeding into the world of the criminals. Like, his requirement of music at all times.
Right.
His requirement, what he does with random noises that he just records, starts to affect
those
the
create
plot.
the issues. Yeah.
Even though at the beginning, and you're just kind of watching him walk to the coffee shop, nothing is happening. But
he's got his parkour sense of navigating the world to the beat.
But you're learning about the character.
And everything is done, and that carries over to the perspective. Everything is metronome. The gunshots are fired. The tires pivot. He rounds the corner to the beat of the music, and I love the way the interplay moved one thing to another, that flow. It was so visually and audio interesting to me. It was just very interesting. I can't think of too many other movies where that's been done to that degree or to that effect.
I believe the Guardians of the Galaxy series is.
I think that had Guardians not come out and kind of beat it to the punch with the opening sequence battle, or the way music is so prevalent and really ties in like a live act. They acknowledge the music.
Yeah, the music exists
inside
the world,
and it's created by the character in the world. And yeah, that was impressive with Guardians. This movie would have been much more of note had Guardians not beat to the punch.
But what Baby Driver does is the presence of the music also affects the characters a little bit more.
Yeah, that's true. It's not just a soundtrack of their life. It impacts the way that they live, in the sense that sound itself, this is like a radio play. The sound is so, you could watch this blindfolded and still understand so much of what's going on, because they drowned sound out as well in many scenes. They take it away from you, and you feel it in those scenes.
But I guess if you see the trailer for Baby Driver, you know that Baby has an issue caused by an accident. He's got a hum in his drum, and he has to listen to music in order to drown it out.
Right. He's got tinnitus, so he's constantly hearing, because of a childhood car accident, he's constantly hearing
the hum,
which would drive him mad had he not some backbeat soundtrack to kind of locomotion to his
In regards to that, though, I find that Hollywood likes its...
orphans?
What's the word for an illness you believe you have, but it's more of a mental issue? It starts with the letter P.
Psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic.
Yeah.
It likes its psychosomatic issues.
Yeah.
There was Sherlock, which had its psychosomatic issues. The asthma is generally a psychosomatic issue.
Yeah.
You just stop needing an inhaler.
Right.
You just stop.
Because you've overcome it.
You've overcome your need of inhalers. And for him, it feels like there are some scenes in which something else.
Yes.
Love cures tinnitus.
It does.
Even if you've just met this girl.
Get you some love eardropped, and they don't particularly develop her well at all, but you love her because she's a cutie pie. She works in a diner.
Because that's what the story demands.
Right. Okay, so we should probably talk about the performances in this movie, because there are some excellent actors, and there are some excellent performances here that were unexpected for me.
And actually, I would argue that everybody does an excellent performance.
Outside of Lily James?
Yeah.
I thought she was capable.
I just think maybe her character wasn't written quite as well.
Agree. On the other hand, we have amazing mastermind Kevin Spacey, who I love his character arc.
Yes.
It's so interesting and unexpected for me. Jamie Foxx being a maniac. John Bernthal being John Bernthal, Punisher, same John Bernthal as always, but riveting because you're worried he's going to come to the screen and punch you in the face at any moment.
Then John Hamm.
John Hamm. Charming John Hamm, not Don Draper John Hamm here, but also kind of suave and mysterious and extremely driven to kill and pursue his own ends. So strong cast. I think
bad guys must be bad guys.
Bad guys were excellent in this movie. The hero's only as good as its villains,
and when you surround yourself with villains,
you become one to some degree. And I think that morality play is interesting here, although it's a minor aside.
But I just didn't expect so much time to also be spent on. Actually, if it's supposed to be a story, like a love story about this guy who's in this criminal world, more time is spent developing Baby's relationship to his foster parent than the girl.
But is that to the benefit of the audio element? Because his father is deaf, so they're signing to each other, and he's trying to convince him to let go of this life of crime, and why can't you just be a pizza boy? You like to drive, live a noble and clean life, and don't involve yourself with this dirty money. And I was really touched by that relationship, though.
Yeah, and that relationship does actually build on like a lot of the themes of the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas the love story is more of your psychosomatic cure.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the hum stops when she's
Well, that's his escape. You gotta have the escape.
Yeah.
And so
something to get away from crime.
Yeah. The promised land. One last job, and then we're out of here, toots. We're gonna blow this popsicle stand of this town, and we'll never look back again. Which, is fine. It's typical for the genre, so it works in that sense. Edgar Wright's movies are...
They borrow some genre tropes, they break others.
Yes. He's willing to play with elements. He's proven that over the years. I think Scott Pilgrim effectively may be one of the best representations of our generation on film, in terms of relationships, in terms of technological use, video games, comic books, movies, and the way those things saturate and inundate and seep into every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, and you don't really see too many people interact with each other in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I love Scott Pilgrim. The comics and the movie, I think it's incredible. And I think that a lot of that teen romance genre stuff kind of holds over here. And it's all super charming, and it's like 500 Days of Summer, he's dancing around in the headphones, and just the way they dance through a space, and the laundromat, and the colors are all different. I mean, it's impressive to see visual. It's extremely visual.
Well, you bring up the laundromat, and they enter this laundromat, and like every single machine is going and it's got a different color fabric going inside the machine, and I'm like, this just looks like a staged, a staged Hollywood production.
Totally.
But at the same time, part of me would say that Baby would be the kind of character who would specifically put a different color in a beach laundromat just to get that appearance.
Very neurotic, exactly.
But like it's very nostalgic about that old time.
Yeah, that's true. I think also Edgar Wright really does like to play with color. It's kind of like The Great Gatsby. How every color has like a sort of symbolism.
Yeah.
Like a red car is danger, fast, and he changes his cars over the course of this movie too. You know, he has his normie, mundane kind of like Buick LeSabre. He's driving around for his pizza jobs, and he has to be, that's like his Bruce Wayne persona. But moonlighting in crime, he gets the cool whip and interesting cars. And I don't know. There's less focus. This is not a tuner head, gearhead, Fast and Furious movie at all.
Yeah.
I can't stand those movies.
You will see the wheels spinning, but not quite. It's not the focus.
Right. And don't get me wrong, the driving is impressive. There are some very cool sequences, and they are used in cool ways. But this is much more about...
It's more about the characters. It's more about the criminals, if not the crime.
So we should talk about the life debt Baby owes Kevin Spacey's character and these other various groups of ne'er-do-wells who cross his path.
Well, I think like the life debt exists as a plot device in the narrative structure to say that why is Baby doing crime?
Yes.
You want to believe that, okay, is Baby on the same level of criminal as these other criminals? And that kind of acts as like this plot device that says, Baby's only doing crime because he owes this guy.
Yeah.
This kingpin of crime.
Absolutely.
And that's the only reason he's doing all of this.
It reminded me a lot of Grand Theft Auto 5, like the pulling into the factory, and here's how you pick your crew, and here's the blueprint, and you're going to do it this way. You're going to go into this bank with this driver, you're the wheelman, and this guy's the brute force, and this girl's the distraction. I love that stuff. Like, all the planning sessions, that was great.
And also, at the same time, the lead character of Grand Theft Auto 5 gets himself into a situation where he owes somebody a lot of money.
Right.
And the only reason he gets into crime is because of his debt.
I guess debt really is something a lot of people can relate to in this day and age. And being under the thumb and being required to do horrible things to get along with it and get out of it. You're not really free, and there is no promised land until you've resolved it.
But like one of the major themes in the movie is he doesn't really realize. Like, he looks at the crime thing, and he looks at him driving, and he's like, man, this is a lot of fun, driving super fast.
I can use his talents.
I can drive really fast. Nobody's really bothering me.
Yeah.
I don't seem to have an education of some sort.
Right. He could, like, block out the evil he was doing, because that was his one gift.
But he sees no evil, so he hears no evil.
Yeah, exactly. He speaks no evil because he's mute. That you're constantly
because he barely talks.
He doesn't associate.
He doesn't associate with the criminal element.
Mm-hmm.
But as the movie progresses, he starts to see the violence that his fellow criminals are doing, and then he realizes that he may not be in the right profession.
Right.
While at the same time,
he's constantly showing his redeeming. Yeah, Lee James' waitress character shows up.
What was her name? Deborah.
Deborah. Debra. And I like how they talk about the soundtracks. Like, everyone's name appears in so many songs, you know. And she only had 2 songs, but Baby, you're in every song ever.
Oh. But like, that's the thing. Like, this is the kind of movie where you have people just randomly having discussions about music,
which was cool. For a while, I almost was thrown off. I'm like, this is like very Tarantino-esque. These asides, these non sequiturs about pop culture and about music history. It was very cool. Yeah, kind of educational. Like, oh yeah, I want to know more about 70s jazz. I want to know more about that era. And like, I like that Baby had an iPod for every mood, for every job.
Although I do have one very important question.
Yeah.
If Baby owns a whole bunch of iPods that he carries around in his pockets at all times, how does he keep all of them charged?
Yeah, I mean, especially because they've changed chargers over the years, and the new iPhones don't even have headphone cable plugins. Like, what are you supposed to do?
You want to feel a particular mood, and you pull out your iPod that has that mood, and you forgot that it was in your second jacket.
Right.
And you got nothing.
Yeah, that tech level is troubling. I think this movie tries to do some of the things Guardians doesn't at level 2, like a tape player, cassette player is like a bygone. No one makes mixtapes anymore. You make mini discs for your girl. Oh wait, that's also bygone. And then it was CDs, and then it was iTunes or Napster playlists, and now it's Spotify playlists. Like, the technology has evolved, so this movie does kind of step outside its time period in a lot of ways. Stylistic choices, things. The diner feels very 50s. It tries to like have these touchstones to kind of pull it back to give it more longevity.
It's kind of like Napoleon Dynamite.
Right.
Napoleon Dynamite borrowed
a lot of like 80s and 70s,
stuff, but not
not
necessarily stuff from its era.
Right.
It was like I remember them talking about like how that, like the UFC, like they were talking about the Octagon in Napoleon Dynamite, but that doesn't happen until
like 2007 or something.
That didn't exist at the time.
Right.
But it's just that idea of borrowing, like, okay, we'll bring this
take the
keyboard,
cool stuff from whatever,
so he can make music. So Baby can make music.
Yeah.
We'll have him make it on cassette tapes.
Yep.
Because
I did like that element, is how he was recording the pieces. He's not an idiot. Does he look like an idiot? Or, the samples and how he would cut that together and how the soundtrack would then cause the problem. Like, you were recording me? You're going to blackmail me? It's like, no, I just like to make beats. This is my little trophy case, our discussion, that you acknowledge my genius. And how he had to have that cassette tape of his mother's voice. That was the one remnant he had of his past. And that was the thing he would go back for, like that one sample.
But also making it a cassette tape allowed it to stand out. Like, if there was a CD...
It couldn't be reproduced. He could have just saved that thing to his hard drive. But because it's a cassette, there's no copying that sucker.
And also, if you had a pile of CDs, it wouldn't necessarily stand out.
Yeah.
But you have, like, a pile of cassette tapes, and you're like, okay, I can see the label.
Where audio is object. Like a vinyl. Like putting the disc, the process of selecting the song. Like one song on the side of a vinyl. That is something lost on people today for the most part. The just bring up a Spotify playlist and there's a million songs, or YouTube, the entire library of every song ever made is in there for you. But I still collect vinyls because I like cover art and I like to hear good quality of music. And that's something that is meant for connoisseurs, which Baby is, and not just of...
Is he a connoisseur of audio, or does he like the feeling the audio gives him?
There's a sense of memory.
I don't think he would really care about if the technical aspect of the audio was increased.
Yeah.
As much as just the feeling that song gives him.
That's true.
Because
it's like a sense of control. His minimal sense of control comes through these things. It's his baby blanket. It's his security.
His security blanket.
His little teddy, yeah.
But, like, he steals a car, and then he has no iPod on it.
As long as he can plug in his music, he's waiting. He's fiddling around.
The radio
he can't drive until he's got it. He's got to find the right track to drive it. Yeah. I think that's... that needed object is such a tell. Like, to have it give you the power, but also be, like, your kryptonite. Like, he had to have it or he couldn't operate.
Yeah.
And maybe we've all got those sorts of things, like our vice or our superpower. As artists, as writers, gotta have your magic typewriter. I can't.
I need my lucky pen.
Yeah, exactly. I need my lucky pen. I need my marker. I need my certain pad of paper. My special book. If I lose this book, I'm lost. And as someone who's had, like, my sketchbook stolen, they are my children. So him losing his cassette tape, I understand him going back. Gotta get my cassette tapes. I will sacrifice my life for this. Like, I would fight someone to the death for one of my sketchbooks. I always think about walking down the streets at night from the bar after.
Steal my wallet.
But you can have my wallet on my phone, but I'm keeping that sketchbook, and you're gonna have to kill me to take it. Like, I understood that point in the movie, and it spoke to me. In another sense, Love as Salvation. We saw John Hamm's character. He found Someone who was totally different than him. We find out the villain's backstory.
Yeah.
That he was like a wall. Well, Jamie Foxx's character sizes him up, and we don't know that it's his backstory, not through his own words, but
you get the impression that that's
who
his character.
He called him on who he was.
And
he read his card.
It's one of the rare bits of character development that the criminals get.
Yeah.
A lot of the criminals generally switch between being alive and dead. That's their only character development.
Yeah. But there's a couple crews we meet.
Yeah, there's a couple crews.
And some of them are just more well-developed than others.
Yeah. You only got so much time.
Right.
And when you're jumping between everything, and the movie does try to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so Jon Hamm's character, he has a girlfriend, and they endure for most of the movie, but at some point he loses her. And you see how easy it would be for a baby to go off the rails as well, and how you can have your paradise taken away from you in a person, the one that you build in a person. First by baby's mother, and then, the possible loss of this newfound love that they finally finds and has a chance at. And that's kind of the driving force, and you see that is the thing. Like, Jon Hamm's character is he's almost likable, and he's kind to baby up to that point. Like, he could have just let him go, but then the girl gets taken out, and he becomes unhinged and holds him responsible for that. Which made him a terrifying villain at that point.
So, here's a question.
Yeah.
Is the end of the movie fact or fantasy?
I thought the same thing, actually. I read it as fantasy because some elements of it were... They had gotten to such a dire point with everyone dying and everyone falling apart, and there's no way they were getting off that easy. And everything is just colored all wrong, and I think I had the same point where I thought this could very well be a dream state where he's just stuck in prison forever, A, or B, she's dead.
Now, like, on one hand, you have, like, everything's colored wrong, but then the world corrects itself.
Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, is that just his, the strength of his fantasy?
Yeah.
And, because of that, okay, let's follow that line of thought. Let's say that is fantasy. Does he essentially become Kevin Spacey's character?
Yeah.
Like, the kind of character who says, I once had what you had.
Yeah, it was you. That's another interesting point. Yeah, that's funny that you had the same idea. I thought the same thing when I was walking out there. I'm like, that was probably the happy fantasy ending that you crave for yourself out of a horrible situation,
like,
rotting in a jail cell.
Like, have you seen The World's End?
Yes.
The end of the movie was ridiculous.
Right.
But I felt that the ending of the movie was the only happy ending the main character could have created
for yourself. Yep, exactly.
Like every other ending, like if he just stopped the bad guys and everybody went on with their normal life, he would have lost his purpose and then killed himself.
It's like being in a dream. When you're about to die, you change the situation to survive, and I guess that's like the narrative must go on, and you create the happy ending for yourself. Although there's another point of continuity. Kevin Spacey's nephew at some point, he's like teaching him. There's like a tutor. I want you to teach this kid how to case a joint for a job, and he sees baby and the kid, so you can understand how he would be empathetic and want to take this kid under his wing and be the dickish uncle who's exploiting him for bank jobs as a wheelman, but also kind of have a soft spot for him and want to help him out. Like I like that moment. That was an interesting little character bit for the mastermind. To not just be totally usury. Like, why would he choose to help him and let him go and sacrifice himself? I don't know. That was really sad. That part got to me.
Well, yeah.
There's a good amount of death in this movie.
Yeah.
Most of the characters die.
And for all the whimsical ways that the movie behaves,
there's darkness.
There's very dramatic scenes. There's very strong contrast.
But altogether, I would definitely recommend this movie. I think it bears multiple viewings because there's enough of a twisting narrative through things. There's enough good music here. It's kind of one of those movies like Scott Pilgrim that you could watch a lot of times and enjoy a lot of times, which I don't usually say about movies. I'm kind of one of those people who would rather consume new and different things. And this is a new and different type of story, told in a new and different and exciting way. which is well worth your dollars.
Yeah,
I would recommend to anyone.
Yeah, I would recommend it to anybody, and I would say like it's something you could watch again with different groups of people.
Totally.
Like it's that movie you could be like, oh, you haven't seen it? I'll watch it with you.
Check out Baby Driver. It's pretty easy to get on board. Like most people understand the genre of like heist flick, car flick, love story. It's harder to describe it as like it's an audio, visual, heist,
Sort of musical.
love story musical. Yeah, it's a weird, and that's kind of what Edgar Wright does. He makes these weird mashup hybrids that are fascinating.
Yes.
I'll always go see an Edgar Wright movie, and I think, though he has made very few movies, I understand why they take someone to cook, because they're passion projects.
Yeah.
I like that studios still back him, especially Sony. That's a pretty big.
Although it's done pretty well. I want to
Yeah,
say.
I think it's done fairly well.
I looked it up. They had a budget of like $30 million, and it's done $80 million. So
Yeah, pretty small budget film. I mean, all they really spent money on was
the actors
blowing up cars and actors. So
blowing up cars, closing off a couple roads, buying multicolored clothing so they could put it in the laundromat,
totally.
and have all of them running simultaneously. That's got to be
A lot of quarters. And apparently, I was watching a documentary, like a making of, they had to actually feed quarters because there was no, like, one switch to do that for all of them. They couldn't, like, hardwire it. So, like, oh no, a guy was going through for, like, a day putting quarters into all of them contiguously.
All right, we'll cut between takes.
Give him a break. Yeah. Go see Baby Driver. Go support an auteur.
See Baby Driver. See Dunkirk.
What more is there really to say? I think
absolutely nothing. We have covered everything that could ever be said about these two movies. It's done.
I mean, pretty much that's all she wrote.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. You can find me, Art of the Tin Man, SoundCloud, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and your blog and audio are. It was a good idea.
freightcar.wordpress.com.
Right.
And then the podcast would be It Sounded Good on Paper at SoundCloud. Also on iTunes now.
So check that out.